This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, y'all? This is One Royal Way here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield, Jordan Foote, Josh Kesier joining me as always. Second episode of the week. If you're watching on YouTube, which you should subscribe to as well, and you see us wearing the exact same thing, because we're recording these back to back, so don't be too alarmed. We do leave our houses. This episode's all about the MLB draft that just took place. We're going to talk about a lot of the Royals picks, mainly the top guys and where they fit in. But, gentlemen, how are we feeling?
I feel like this is going to get nasty.
Good chance.
I feel fine. I'm the same as, and like the peek behind the curtain, we recorded the first podcast like 10 minutes before this one, so I feel the same, but it's going to be a very introspective, reflective, forecast-centric podcast. Like all those things all at once.
Yeah, I think that probably.
And then some.
So,
and then some. Let's do it.
Just we'll go with some just intro overall thoughts on the first 7 picks, and then we'll get into the Royals and on down the line. Mine is Paul Skeens going number 1. It was kind of a weird, like the couple days leading up to the draft were weird because you were hearing like it could be Langford, it could be Cruz, it could be Skeens. Like there was really no one really knew. By like early on Sunday, you kind of could tell the Cruz, it wasn't going to be Cruz. It was probably going to be Langford. And they come out and they get Paul Skeens, who is best prospect we've seen as a pitcher, college pitcher, since Steven Strasburg, Garrett Cole, like that type. The question for me is, like, how soon is he going to be in the big leagues? And I would not, like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's on the opening day roster, like, next year. I firmly believe you could plop him in AAA right now and he would get dudes out, like, with no problem. It's stuff that is, I mean, it's an 80 fastball, it's a 70 slider. The changeup is a 50, and it's still ridiculously good. Like, he is as polished of a pitcher as I've seen at the college level ever. I mean, it's about a safe, like, surefire thing. I know we always talk about there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. There are some dudes that break the mold, and Paul Skeens is one of them.
He would produce better results the rest of the season than at least one guy on the Royals staff, right?
Most. Like, he would.
I was just going to be a nice guy and say one.
Dude, I'm not exaggerating. He would be the best pitcher on the Royals by a country mile right now.
He'd be pretty darn solid if he
hard to refute that.
I mean, and I just keep going back to this point, like, what a kick in the balls to get absolutely screwed by the lottery when the team was awful in this draft class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Jordan, what you got?
I think Max Clark at number 3, committed to Vandy, obviously going to be signing with Detroit. It's not like up in the air or anything. Makes hard contact, should translate the gap power to more home run power. I think he weighs like 190, 195. So he has a little bit of room to maybe get up to like 200, 205 pounds. Elite speed and range, really good arm in the outfield. I just didn't think he'd go 3rd. I don't really know where I had him. I think really 6, 7, like later in the top 5 to 10 instead of the upper half. And then Jacob Wilson, number 6, out of Grand Canyon. He's just a really good hitter. Man, his bat-to-ball skills are fantastic. He never strikes out. He can draw a walk. The rest of his game doesn't really jump off the page. To me, he's not a fantastic base runner, not an elite defender, I don't think. But he should be able to stick in the infield, play the hot corner potentially, hit really well. If he grows into some power, I think that's a really good pick by the Athletics. I think it's I hate saying high floor, and I'll probably do it again over the course of this show, but I think a relatively high floor pick. And I said right before we recorded, there's no such thing as a guaranteed player. But for a team, like, it was a pick that I would expect a team like the Royals to make, where you're like, oh, we just need this single here. We need to get on base. And they didn't go for a home run. I think that's pretty much okay.
I'll put it this way with Jacob Wilson. Like, if I had to pick, I heard this on a podcast after the first round. If I had to pick 5 guys out of the first round to make the big leagues, he's probably number 1 or 2.
Yeah. Did I call him Jacob Gonzalez on accident?
No,
I might have done that.
No,
okay. I was going to say, I meant Jacob Wilson if I did.
Here's the problem. You drafted Nicky Lopez in the first round.
Yep. He just doesn't have a ton else besides getting on base.
And he's a bigger frame, at least.
Yeah.
So there might be some more potential.
There was almost no power to speak of with metal bats, which tells me there's not going to be any power to speak of with wood bat. I mean, it's a safe pick, but I mean, there's a difference between safe and whatever they did. But it's the A's. Of course, we all knew they were going to underslot 1-6. It was just a matter of who they were going to take.
Yeah. And it's that nothing drives me nuts, especially this about the Royals' moose left, is having a hot corner that doesn't produce power. I don't know why that irks me so bad, but that seems like what you're potentially signing up for with him. But I mean, it is what it is. It's time to put away this nonsense. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of why we're here, boys. 108, Blake Mitchell. Let's talk about it. The Royals don't care about your history, boys. They just do not care. Their nuts are out on the table. They're making that pick. They're making it with conviction. And it's polarizing, and it's super risky. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Royals take Blake Mitchell, prep catcher out of Sinton, Texas. Here's the pipeline profile: 55 hit, 55 power, 35 runs, 70 arm, 50 field. They have a 55 overall. They had him 14th on their composite board. So here's the thing. I think there's a talented player. Like, I think the Royals drafted a guy with their tools to dream on. I think there is legit power in the bat. He is, by all accounts, a solid catcher defensively at this level, handling the staff, and a plus arm. That's all well and good. Here are the statistics against drafting prep catchers. This is from Royals Weekly. Out of the 350 top 10 picks in the last 35 years, 5 have been high school catchers. Meant for Max Reaper, 2010 to 2019, 14 high school catchers went in round 1. 5 of them reached the major league level. Bo Naylor and Tyler Stevenson were the best, and Bo Naylor just got up after about 5 years in the minors, and Tyler Stevenson has done almost nothing in the big leagues. Yeah. 14 college catchers, conversely, in that same time frame, went round 1, and 12 reached majors. I believe I saw the stat, and I wish I could give credit to who had the tweet, but there have been there's only been one other catcher in the last, I think, 20 years at least. Okay, never mind. I said it wrong. If Blake Mitchell makes the big leagues and he gets a singular hit at any point in his career, he'll be the first round 1 prep catcher to do it since Joe freaking Mauer. This is so risky and so volatile. I mean, the only thing I can say is it better effing work.
They are, for better or worse, like Josh said, putting the cojones on the table. The team is clearly trusting the people in charge, and you should have seen, and I guess you guys did see, JJ Piccolo and Danny Aldeveros on the post-draft night 1 press call on Zoom. Danny specifically, he was thrilled. He was super excited. Like, the Royals, clearly it wasn't like, okay, well, our guy's off the board. Like, oh, Skeens is our guy and he's off the board. Like, something expected. We're like, oh, darn. Or even a guy that they maybe had Jacob Wilson hire, and they said, okay, I guess we'll settle for this. It didn't seem like that. They legitimately seemed like they love Blake Mitchell, and you can point to a Kyle Teal who was on the board. Like, you look at the guys that were there, Chase Dollander was there, Noble Meyer was there, Tommy Troy was there, Matt Shaw was there, Kyle Teal, Jacob Gonzalez, Enrique Bradfield Jr., Arjun Namala, Hurston Waldrop, Colin Houck. Like, they could have went very different ways. They could have went with a pitcher, a different infielder, an outfielder. They had a ton of options, a ton of options to choose from. And they didn't. They went with the guy that they clearly liked a ton and said, to hell with the precedent, to hell with the stigma. It doesn't matter. And Danny used the word stigma when he was in that post-draft presser. It's going to define this regime with JJ Piccolo calling the shots and Lonnie Goldberg still being around and Danny being the scouting director. Entirely huge risk. You could argue it was unnecessary. impossible to tell how the pick's going to turn out right now, but you don't have to look very far to see the world where it likely isn't going to.
And I think that's the thing. Like, there is a window where they found a gem, so to speak, even though he was a consensus like going to be a top 15 to 20 pick. Well, like, they found their guy and they just went for it and got him, and it works, and he comes to the big leagues and he is the successor to Salvador Perez and everything's well and good. We could have that conversation 5-6 years from now, but there's also a very similar path and a more likely path of Blake Mitchell still sitting in Double-A in 2027. And we don't know if he's even going to make it to the big leagues. Like, the Royals are trying to thread a very fine needle here. And they decided in a year where you needed, like, no pun intended, to hit a home run with this pick. And you needed to get somebody that is going to be a part of your big league future soon. Not even soon, but just is going to make a massive impact at the big league level. And you decided to take the most volatile, like, demographic of a draftable prospect with your first pick. So like I said, it needs to work. It has to work. It has to work soon.
The thing about it is, like, the history and the stigma, none of that has to do with Blake Mitchell.
It doesn't. No,
it's just a narrative. It's just a thing that we're talking about because it sent waves throughout the whole draft community. It is a thing. Like, I'm not denying that whatsoever. But Blake Mitchell is his own guy. He makes his own creates his own destiny here. It all depends and rests on how he does it. And it also happens to do with this development team. If they think that there's something to work with there, then they're going to go do it with conviction. They're being aware of the stigma, aware of the history, and still being like, nah, this is the guy. He's got, in that presser, he was talking about a left-handed hitting catcher with power that can, they kept saying leadership. And that's, intangibles, whatever you want to call it, but they are, convinced that he is a leader that can hit from power from the left side of the plate, and he is a catcher. So they think so much that they found the diamond. It sounded like he was at least top 5 on their draft board. They said multiple times that they were surprised that he was still there at 8. So maybe that's just lip service, but it just seems like the way they were talking about it, that he was their guy from the beginning. They'd gone to see him multiple times. JJ only saw like 12 players apparently, and he was one of them, and they're very impressed with him as well. So it's them, the guys it's their job to go find these guys. They say that he's got it. And we got a bunch of sites and a bunch of people like us that are saying, what a dumb pick. Like, they have watched more baseball. They've watched more Blake Mitchell than anybody who had him ranked lower than 108. I'm not trying to lick boots. I'm not trying to be part of state media or be a sunshine pup or homer guy here. But it's a fact that is their job. They are in a position to make that call. They made that call with conviction and confidence. They came out and defended the pick despite knowing the stigma and the history about it, and they still made the pick. And it sure sounds like it's going to be pretty darn close to slot value. So I know that's going to drive a ton of people nuts. But here's the thing about that too. They've already zagged when everybody else zigged. They've already started going upstream against everybody else who talks about Blake Mitchell. So what does it matter if the slot value is what it is? It doesn't at this point. If you're mad about all this, the slot value should not matter to anybody.
I hope that what I was saying earlier in my criticism of the pick is not construed as any sort of criticism about Blake Mitchell, the player. It's nothing to do with that. It is all about the process and the precedent that has been set when it comes to drafting high school catchers. It is tricky, and it is very, like, the Royals are trying to thread a very fine needle. And I have my doubts. I want it to work. I'm not so masochistic that I hope it fails so that I can be proven right. Like, it's not that. It's just there is a lot working against both Blake Mitchell and the Royals in this sense. So we'll see. Very quickly, I'm just curious where you guys would have Blake Mitchell in the rankings. So
7th for me, I think.
Yeah, I'd probably have him 7 because I think Zerpa's coming off here soon. I'd have him above Jensen at this point, but
Who do you have ahead of him at that then?
So I'm just going off the pipeline rankings. I haven't done my own, but it goes Cross, Kudrna, Lofton, Wallace, Mazzucato, Gentry, Zerpa, Jensen, Bolin, Beckway. That's top 10. That's obviously going to change here soon. Yeah, I'd say like somewhere like 7 or 8, which drafting an 8th overall pick and he's not even a top 5 prospect in your system, tricky. That gets really tricky.
I've got him at 5 behind Mazzucato, Vaz, Lofton, and Cross.
Okay. I'll come up with my own rankings at some point, but
yeah. I mean, it's kind of arbitrary and relative and subjective and whatever, but yeah, I still think he's a top 5 guy, but maybe that's rose-colored glasses.
Fair enough. We're going to talk about the picks, the next 2 picks of Blake Walters and Carson Rockford coming up right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for hanging out with us. So in the second round, after taking a very volatile prep catcher, the Royals decided to double down on that and go with the second most volatile demographic that you could draft in taking a prep right-handed pitcher, Blake Walters from Seymour, Illinois. He's an Arizona commit, 6'4", 210. Fastball currently sits in the mid-90s, has been up to 98, it looks like. Just for the pipeline grade, 65 slider, or 65 fastball, 55 slider, 45 changeup, 50 control for a 50 overall, and that's just at present. Future value can obviously change. What I like is they're truly betting on traits here with a big fastball, a good field to spin. A guy kind of manipulates his breaking ball a couple different ways. The changeup is something that he has to develop, but he's 18 years old. There's time for that. It kind of goes back again, similar to the Mitchell pick of just, it gets tricky when you are betting on this type of thing and you're pushing all of your chips to the middle of the table with scouting and development. And this has to, again, it's very similar to Blake Mitchell. This has to work. Like, you have to get something out of Blake Walters. And again, it just gets tricky with prep righties. Now, Kudrna for sure, looks like he's going to hit, possibly. At least the early returns are good, so at least have something. So you're betting heavily on your revamped pitching development to work with this kid and make it work.
Yeah, and I like the peripherals. Just the 6'4", 210. He's got the frame. You don't see that many prep righties come out with that big of a frame at 18, 19 years old. So I think that's good. And that upper 90s velo is apparently new this last spring. So also very intriguing there. But Joel, I think you talked about it on the Royals Weekly stream that it looked like he had that good slider, but he's also got a slower slurve. So if he's got 2 shapes to that slider, I'm also really intrigued by that. But Jordan, I think you're probably going to hit it when you make your points about the comps that Ontiveros made, which also got me pretty excited.
I actually forgot the comps that he made, but Matt Cain. Yeah. He did. I tweeted that. I'm a fraud. Bad memory, but I do remember he was a basketball player for a few years. The Royals, Ontiveros really hammered home because it was just him on Monday and then just him on Tuesday, and really he spoke for the majority of Sunday night too. Athleticism was something the Royals really, really honed in on. And obviously you don't want to draft bad athletes in any sport. It's really bad process, but you can draft the average athletes that have other makeup or a characteristic physically or mentally that you really like. The Royals went high athlete, the high level athlete, and he's one of them. The fastball, I read somewhere that the sustainability of that mid-90s velo, a little bit of a question. The velo's fine, but then does it keep the same plane? It flattens out a little bit as he goes longer into games. He's 18 years old. Wouldn't be too worried about that right now, especially considering he's 6'4", 210, 215. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Yeah, he's going to be a big-time arm, whether that's a Carlos Hernandez big type arm where the fastball does die out in terms of break and you're okay, something has to change here, or just a big time prospect arm. And I think the Roccaforte pick is also interesting, but this one almost intrigues me more than the Blake Mitchell pick because, like Joel said, they went from a very risky demographic, but a player that was absolutely fantastic, to a riskier demographic and a player who was just fun. And like, it's not to say he wasn't, dominant for stretches and stuff, but this pick is going to be more indicative, especially because it's also banking on that pitching development.
I think I saw his fastball as like 2,300 RPM as well. That's fun.
Yeah.
Also very fun.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like you can't necessarily like teach spin like that. So the fact that he has that, and I mean, I've read that the slider goes around the 2,700 RPM, which is above average. Like that's nice to see. So they definitely, like, there are traits here that are good. And it sounds like at least the fastball shape is not the most generic thing of all time, which is the very Royals' previous PD. So betting on, I think, a solid athlete. Like, it's one of those, I like the pick, I like the player. It's just the profile and precedent is what's tricky here.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Moving on to Carson Roccaforte, an outfielder from Louisiana Lafayette. Solid athlete. Sounds like he can really go get it in center field. Solid hit tool. Not a ton of power. Sounds like he had a lot of power as a sophomore. He had like 14, 15 home runs. And then he made the adjustment to his swing to kind of hit more line drives and just get on base a little bit more. And zapped some of the power, but he hit for a little higher average, got on base a little more, had a solid amount of doubles, so at least it's going to be gap-to-gap power. The comp on MLB Pipeline is like Andrew Benintendi-ish, but a little bit better athlete than that, I think. He's got a 60-grade runner, and Andrew Benintendi is not as fast as he thought he was. 45 overall at present. I appreciate that they're kind of betting on the traits of an athlete and kind of buying the dip a little bit with this. Like, stock was much higher the previous year. It's because some of the power potential, but I think I like this pick overall. Just the bat to ball skills are going to translate, I think, and we'll see what happens. If he can stick in center field, I think he's a decent prospect.
Yeah, for sure. And he had 16 home runs and 25 stolen bags in 2022. He was like one of 3 or 4 guys that got 15 and 25. I think that was his stat. He struggled in the Cape Cod League. Like you said, he made that adjustment. He had a 964 OPS this year. He just didn't have the power. He had 22 stolen bags. He was still getting on base a ton. The Royals raved about his athletic profile, and they mentioned, in addition to the defense, they view him as a long-term center fielder. They noticed something that they think they can help him get the most out of that swing and max out his frame and get the power back. So if they can do that, and he goes from a smooth hitting, good defender, good base runner, like, that's a pretty solid floor to begin with. But then you add the power on top of that, and even if it's just average, that's plenty enough, as opposed to, hey, a little bit anemic in the power department, but he gets on base and can steal some bags. Like, this is something that we've harped time and time again. The Royals love defensive proficiency out of their outfielders, especially in center field. He could possibly give them that. There were a couple guys like Cade Cooler, Paul Wilson, Jack Hurley that I kind of had my eye on at that spot. But if he can add and get that power back, then this has potential to be a really good pick.
Yeah, this seemed like a safer pick to me. I'm not expecting a lot, but I still think that there's potentially some type of major league production inside of Roccaforte. With the first 2 being so risky, he is very safe compared to the first 2 guys. So I'm curious to see what he's able to do. But yeah, you guys hit all the bullets here on him. I'm curious to see what he could kind of live up to. They also made the comment to at least his body type is like J.D. Drew and Jim Edmonds as far as like building ability. So those are pretty interesting comps as well, especially if you're throwing in potentially the offensive upside of Andrew Benintendi in there. So I'm intrigued by him. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where he was compared to everybody else, but I'm intrigued by him now.
We're going to take our final break, and we're going to highlight a few of the day 2 and day 3 picks for the Royals coming up here right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Last little bit here for you guys. Thank you for listening to 2 episodes of us this week. We are not going to be on next week because we have 2 episodes. We're going to take our own little all-star break because there'll only be like 4 games for us to talk about at that point. Josh, who was your guy for between rounds 3 and 10 that you really liked?
There was like 3 or 4 guys that I was pretty intrigued by. I had my eye on a few of them, and maybe the one I picked here is the least sexy of them. But he is an absolute unit of a left-handed pitcher, Jacob Widener from Oral Roberts. He is a reliever, which is the first kind of dot to him. You don't really want to come out of the draft thinking you're excited about a reliever. They took him at 259th overall. He is 6'7", 235, and he throws from the sidearm slot. That is Groot in the Guardians of the Galaxy throwing a ball at you from the sidearm. That is awesome. I cannot wait to see him in the major leagues. He's got a pretty decent fastball with a lot of spin on it, but his big pitch is that wipeout slider. So a lot of people, especially in that presser, were talking about comps to Randy Johnson. I don't think he's Randy Johnson, but his limbs are coming at you. He's got a wipeout slider. I don't think the velocity to his fastball is there, but boy, I cannot wait to see him throw baseballs. I am very, very pumped for that. So Jacob Widener is somebody I'm going to keep an eye on, especially, and it's going to be hard to miss him because he's so large.
My guy's not quite as large as him. It's Hyra Wyatt, the 3rd round pick. 6'1", 190. He's got a really impressive fastball, I think, and the slider is probably just as good.
The slider's gross.
Yeah, the slider is pretty nasty, man. 8-0 with a 0.51 ERA, 107 strikeouts in 54 innings. He was a Staples High School kid, so he's another prep pitcher, Connecticut Gatorade Player of the Year. This year committed to USC. We've seen a couple things, and this might be a moot point by the time you're listening, that the signability might not be 100% there with him because of the profile he has. But man, the fastball jumps up to 97 at times. The slider for an 18-year-old is fantastic. Danny Otaveros really raved about the velo and the athleticism. Again, that's a theme. Really smooth. I've seen people call it like a whippy delivery almost, where like it's really, he seems, you can't say it's a confident delivery because all of them are, but like it just, there's something about his delivery. You guys know what I'm talking about. I can't put it into words that I just really thought it was a fun watch.
He's got like, I would say that the comp from like what it looks like on the mound is like George Kirby-ish, where it's just kind of whippy and kind of funky, a little bit of deception there. That'd be what I would say. My guy is probably my favorite pick of the entire draft. A guy that I would have liked in round 2 or 3, and the Royals were able to get him in the 5th, I believe, 4th round. He was the 56th ranked prospect on Pipeline, and the Royals got him to 106. That's Hunter Owen, left-handed pitcher for Vanderbilt. Dude is 6'6", 261. So he's a unit too from the left side. Mm-hmm. And pretty much across the board is like plus to plus plus. It's 55 fastball, 50 curveball, 60 slider, a 50 changeup. Control is solid. So he grades out as just like at a minimum like a mid-rotation piece. And for the Royals that need guys like that you can move kind of quick, that you feel are going to have a good feel to pitch, good stuff, and good command of that stuff. So the development side really isn't having to do a ton with them. It's really just minor tweaks other than like some massive projects like we've seen in the past. This is going to be, I think, the pick that we all look back on and go, man, how the heck did the Royals get him in the 4th round?
I can tell you there's a red flag. He's had to shut it down late in the season, both the last 2 years because of shoulder fatigue. That's a red flag, and I bet that's why he fell quite a bit. But you're right. I mean, that's a big get.
Yeah. So then my guy for day 3, the Royals got this guy in the, hold up here, I lost my tab. We got him in the 13th round out of Xavier, pitcher Ethan Bosacker. He recently actually committed in the transfer portal to Oklahoma State, a guy I was actually pretty excited about. So when I saw his name come across, I didn't know he was draft eligible. But 101 strikeouts in 98 innings for Xavier. Only 29 walks in there, so there's some decent control. And apparently he threw a CG Shuddy in the NCAA tournament to help Xavier in regionals. So that was a pick again that I like. I don't know a ton more about him other than just he's got some high strikeout numbers. But the control is what I really like to see there. I can't wait to dive into him a little more.
What's his name?
Bo Sacker.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I got the pronunciation correct. Jordan, what do you got?
I'm just going to get both of mine. Screw it. I'm just going to power through here. Mason Miller in the 14th round. He's really a classic Royals reclamation project. The difference is he's like a draft pick instead of a 29-year-old journeyman pitcher. 5.68 ERA, 16 walks in 35 innings 25 innings earlier this year. 35 strikeouts, though. He had surgery that ended his season. David Lesky tweeted out he was the 108th overall prospect back in 2020 when he came out of high school. 6'3", 205. The team, he went to Florida Gulf Coast University. Team play-by-play broadcaster John Vitas tweeted out, despite his ERA, many scouts believe he's got a shot to be a quality pro. It seems like he hasn't lost a ton of that luster as a prospect. And then later on in the 17th round, on a much smaller scale, kind of a journeyman type guy that played a bunch of different spots, Connor Oliver, 6'2", 170-pound lefty. Now, the flip side here is back in 2021, Prospects Live published an article. He weighed 185 in that one. So I think he weighs a little bit more than the team listed him. At Miami of Ohio, 102 strikeouts, 46 walks in 78 innings, 3.89 ERA. The fastball's been reported a couple different spots, high 80s, low 90s. Some places have it 90 to 93 with the top at 94. So I'm just intrigued to see, like, how much does he actually weigh? How big is he actually? How high does the fastball go? Like, that is a man of mystery type pick with a slider and changeup, really impressive curveball, and then obviously the fastball too.
I'm going to go with Jared Dickey. Royals got him in, let's see, 11th round. Yeah. I had him, the composite aggregate board, I believe it was 101st overall. So that's pretty good value, especially if you think you could sign him. But a lot to like about him as well. Left-handed outfielder, big power potential. I mean, he's already got power to go, and a lot of scouts believe that they could unlock potentially more power. They think that, he's been playing some catcher. He's probably more suited for a corner outfield spot, but that's where the power is really going to play up is out there. The profile is your normal corner outfielder, but something interesting about him, as a Texas high school junior, this is from the Pipeline write-up as well, Dickey became depressed as a high school junior and let his weight to get to 265, and then lost 60 pounds when he got to college to kind of start ramping it up. So he was catching, he's behind the plate for the Volunteers, he's played a lot of outfield as well, but I like his potential a lot, especially where they got him. I feel like that's somebody that they could really start to justify some of those potential underslotting to the front of the draft. If you go get a guy like Dickey in the 10th round, able to sell him on joining the organization for a little bit more cash instead of going back and re-entering, I think that's a W. So I was pretty ecstatic to get Jared Dickey there in the 10th round.
That's going to do it for this episode of One Royal Way. Thank y'all so much. Be sure to leave a comment, like it, and subscribe. Let us know who your favorite pick in the 2023 draft was and who you look forward to seeing in Kansas City someday. Take care.